Do you follow sports a lot, and do you have to? And by that I mean, when you are looking at when you're talking to a company and trying to make a deal for an athlete, do the stats and really the ability of the player, is that what you center your negotiations around, or do you try and bring in other factors to sell their popularity, if you know what I mean? I'm kind of thinking in terms of like a Tim Tebow, for example. It's probably hard to sell him on a fact level, but he clearly sells a lot of jerseys. So, what do you need besides stats? What do you go into?
You use whatever works to your advantage. You throw the kitchen sink at them. I mean, if it's a guy like Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers who puts up a ton of stats, then that's what you focus on. If it's a guy like Tim Tebow that sells a lot of jerseys, then you always focus in any negotiation. You always focus on what the strengths are, and you don't ignore the weaknesses, but you minimize them. And nowadays, what is a big thing is social media. So the individual like Tim Tebow, who might not be a stat monster, and many people might not think that he's an NFL quarterback, but if he's got over 1 million Twitter followers, then a brand is going to be interested in that, because that to a brand, that is a direct conversation with their consumers. Now, I have no idea how many Twitter followers Tim Tebow has, but that's a big thing. So somebody like a Chad Ochocinco or even a Terrell Owens, those guys, they have a huge audience on their social media platforms, and that makes them more valuable. So if I think that that's going to get them a better deal, I'll focus on that. If it's somebody that's on the rise in terms of being a player, then yeah, I'll say, this guy averaged 20 points a game this year, but next year he's going to average 30 points. Then you focus on that. It depends on who the individual is. It depends on what kind of deal you're negotiating. But I think the guideline that you use is always to focus on the strengths, minimize the weaknesses.
Right. So because the strength of these athletes a lot of times is their marketing power, are you giving them a lot of advice in terms of PR?
Yeah, it's basically don't tweet something stupid. is really the advice. I mean, the social media aspect is a double-edged sword. It's like you need them to do it, and you need them to have a social media presence. But at the same time, you cringe every time a tweet goes out because you're worried it's something that you're going to have to clean up. And obviously some people are safer than others. Like, I know for a fact that I am not worried about Tara Lipinski showing up on TMZ with some Lindsay Lohan cocaine nose. I know that's not going to happen. Tara is not. I know her as a person. I know that's not going to happen. You represent somebody like Terrell Owens, well, anything's possible. So, you sort of have to, be, you always have your eyes and ears open to everything, just in case. You always want to be out in front of something. My advice when something goes down is get out in front of it, get the oxygen out of the fire. Because when you start the cover-up, that's the problem.
Right.
The media has too many eyes and ears out there on the street now. It's impossible to get away with anything. It's impossible. I mean, the politicians do it. These corporate heads do it. It's crazy. If you've got something to hide and you give somebody an agenda to find it, they will find it. So I always feel like if you take the oxygen out of the fire and you kill the story, you're going to have to endure the bad press and you're going to have to endure the negative damage, but it goes away. Right. It always goes away.
Right. And just kind of a quick follow-up to that, do you are there any clients that you would consider, not taking if they're going to be kind of PR nightmares sometimes, or are you pretty much open to anyone and just kind of trying to tell them, you should be smarter about how you go about your business?
No, I mean, you do have, I'm a youngin' still in this business, so I can't be overly picky, but I have to be smart because it's just like your friends in school, right? Like, it's like you are who you associate with. So you do have to kind of be careful. Remember, a lot of my conversations are with ad agencies, PR agencies, and brands directly. So I need to reflect my own image and my client's image in the same way. So I can't call a Fortune 500 company and ask them to endorse somebody who's got a history of, beating up his wife or something like that. So, yes, you do have to be a little bit selective in that way in character. But, at the same time, society loves a comeback story. So if you have somebody that's had some bad press or has made some mistakes, you got to really vet that person and see what kind of person they are now. And see, has this guy or has this woman, grown up? Has she changed her ways? Is she genuine? Is she sincere? And if they are, it's always a risk, but at some point you got to put your faith in them. And then, if you could be the guy behind that comeback story, then you're a hero.
Right, yeah. So I want to shift the focus of this interview a little bit more personal in terms of, how did you get into this business? Because from what I've heard, there's really no, normal path into getting your way into, sports marketing or sports agent.
There shouldn't be a normal path because it's not a normal job. Nowadays, I know that there are a lot of universities that offer sports management as an undergrad class. I don't know if it's a major just yet, but I think you can now take some classes, and I know there's graduate classes. When I started, there was none of that. In fact, I didn't figure this out. I didn't figure out that this is really what I wanted to do until I was 29 years old. So I'm giving a little bit of away about what my age is. I had all sorts of jobs. I did all sorts of things before this, and then somewhere along the line, a light bulb went off in my head that said, "Oh, I want to be a sports agent." And, maybe it was right after watching Jerry Maguire. I don't know, but whatever it was, it clicked. I resigned from my old job, which was I was a headhunter, and I just started knocking on doors all over New York City at modeling agencies, sports agencies, marketing agencies, not really fully understanding the difference between all of them. Just, I wanted a title with it that said agent.
Right.
And I was relentless. I was relentless for a whole spring/summer. And then finally, a friend of a friend of a friend knew the guy that represented Charles Barkley. And I called him, and I got him on the phone somehow or another, and I just went into this whole spiel about, "Hey, my name is Chris, so-and-so told me to call you, and I want to be an agent, and he told me you'd help me." And I just went into this rapid-fire sort of like presentation over the phone on Lexington Avenue.
Right.
And there was cars whizzing by and everything, and he was like, okay. He said, you dropped the right name. I'll give you 20 minutes tomorrow morning at 8:30. So I was there. I talked to the guy. 20 minutes turned into an hour. We had a great conversation, and I thought he was ready to offer me a job. I was like, I'm going to be this guy's assistant. It's going to be great.
Right.
Not so much. He gave me a list of other agencies to call that were smaller than the agency that he was at,
Right.
and said, try these, and by the way, you're going to have to be somebody's assistant. And that's what everybody told me. Everybody told me that the way to be an agent is to be an agent's assistant. Well, it's not much of a leap to think that being an agent as assistant is not very fun.
Right.
But I knew that if this is what I wanted to do, this is the path I had to take. And at that point, I had made the decision. So I literally called this guy that the other guy referred me to every week for 3 months straight. And then he finally granted me an interview. I got the job as his assistant, and that was my start. Now, is it Mike? Your aunt is Wendy?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So Wendy was one of the people that I had the privilege of dealing with on a daily basis when I started out as an assistant. And I will tell you that Wendy is responsible partially for me being the agent that I am, whether that's good or bad.
Great.
She people like that kind of molds your career as you move forward. I just started there as an assistant. I worked my way up, and I'm still at the same agency however many years later, and now I have my own little division. So it was not a very normal path, nor do I recommend it for the week of stomach and heart.
Yeah.
But here I am.
That's great. Just have a quick question. Are there any well-known athletes that you have out there that you really want to meet? And when you meet really big names, is it since you said you're still kind of young in the industry by some standards? Do you still kind of get wowed by certain huge names, or at this point is it just very natural to talk to these kind of people?
Some things are still they still take it. I am a sports fan. I think you had asked me before how much of a fan you have to be. you got to be a big one. I mean, you can't not be a sports fan and get into this. You got to really, really love it because, first of all, it changes your view of everything in many, many ways. And it also, it's not easy. It's a hard job, and it's a rough life. And it's especially rough when you have a family. So you got to really, really love it. So with that said, there are still people that, you grew up rooting for or you grew up idolizing that, when you meet them, it is still kind of cool. I've never been a starstruck guy, but there are people that you meet that are just like, wow, like that's pretty amazing, Muhammad Ali, I got to do a deal because I represent his daughter, Layla. So I got to do a deal for Layla and Muhammad last year for Jeep. And, that was crazy. It was like Muhammad Ali,
Right.
I'm a big Yankee fan, big Jet fan. So anytime I get to meet those guys, there still is a thrill. There still is a thrill.
That's good to hear.
You get a little desensitized to it. It's not like you're showing up at a card show, and you're going nuts. Like I have, I have friends that are Met fans, and I have voicemails from Dwight Gooden on my voicemail, and when I'm with them, I'll play it for them, and they go nuts because it's like, oh my God, it's not Gooden,
Yeah.
So, stuff like that is still kind of cool, but you're a little desensitized, especially when you're negotiating on somebody's behalf. Then it becomes X's and O's.
Right, exactly. So we're almost out of time, but just as a final question, we are a college radio station. So for all those students out there that are looking to maybe do something similar to you, what advice would you have?
My advice is to go to law school and become a corporate attorney or a divorce attorney. Don't do this. No, look, it's a great job. It has its perks. It really does. But it is a lot. However hard you think it is, it's harder. And that's not to toot my horn because I don't by any means think that I've made it to some pinnacle. I still got a long way to go. It's just, you'll know within the first couple of months of whether or not this is what you want to do. And my advice is this. Read everything you can possibly get your hands on. No more than the next guy. Be prepared. Rest. And try to make sure you find a balance between your personal life, your family life, and your work life. Don't let it consume you to the point where you just ignore everything else. That's not good either.
Right. All right. Thanks so much, Chris. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks very much.
No problem. Hope it helps, and I hope I help boost your ratings. And if you need somebody to negotiate sponsors for you, let me know.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chris.
All right, guys.
Bye.